Hi, welcome back for more MILFs, Mysteries, and Mayhem on Season 3 of my unhinged recap of Desperate Housewives. The wall is looking beautiful. I just have to touch up the tape a little bit. You know, the thing that is getting me through is that when I finish filming Season 3, I can put up the wall for Season 4. And I've been looking at this wall for too long. My roommate's been looking at this wall for too long. Everyone, shout out to Melanie. What else? I want to thank my first ever channel supporter. My friend Risa so graciously donated to the channel to help me get some more orange violence tape. So thank you so much, Risa. I want to let you know, since we're probably all mystery lovers here, that Risa has a channel of her very own with her sister Ariana, and they play the Nancy Drew mystery games for PC. It's a wonderful channel. I have been watching them for 3 years. Risa and I go way back to my 2019 Nancy Drew era. We have been through the trenches together. Go check out Risa and Ariana's channel, the Krolmeister Sisters. I'll leave a little link down below. I did purchase more tape. I ended up getting a 6-pack of colors that worked out perfectly to be the colors that I was gonna need. So I thought I was out of orange tape. Oh girl, people don't stop fucking on this show. But it's okay, I have more pink tape now. Do I have anything else to say? So I went to a play this weekend. It was off Broadway. And I met Marcia Cross. I have never met a kinder person in my life. I'm serious, just really good vibes. We talked for 5 minutes. I was probably thinking what the fuck is this bitch rambling about? She's very much an actor, which I love. Yeah, it was just really special. I'm very glad I had the courage to stage door after because she was really nice. And now, without further ado, let us jump into Season 3 of Desperate Housewives. The Season 3 premiere of Desperate Housewives was watched by 24.09 million viewers. Even after the train wreck, we won't say train wreck, we'll say sophomore slump. After the sophomore slump of Season 2, we are thriving again. Season 3, Episode 1. We open a woman we've never seen before. Who is she? Her name is Elma Hodge. Elma Hodge is preparing to leave her husband. He goes to work. She is rushing to gather all of her things so she can leave. But there's just one problem. Her parrot will not come down into his cage. She gets delayed. Orson walks in and says, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm leaving you." And then the next day, Carolyn Bigsby stops by. She is one of Elma's friends and neighbors, and she is played by none other than Laurie Metcalf, who you may know from her hit role as Weed on the show Hacks. Also, my favorite ghost face. She's asking where Elma is. Orson, I want to note, has clearly just scrubbed the place down. Okay, he has gloves on. The place is sparkling clean. It's almost like he's trying to hide something. Orson tells Carolyn that Elma left. And then we cut to 6 months later. So this is one of 2 times Desperate Housewives does a pretty big time jump. It works really well. This was a good fucking call. It is 6 months later. Orson proposes to Bree. Bree tells the girls that she's engaged, and after Gabby makes this comment about the sex, Bree tells her, "Oh, no. We are waiting until we are married to consummate our relationship." Orson is helping Bree clean the kitchen because he like her, is very tidy. He knows a lot about stain removal, and that really gets Bree going. Yeah, they end up doing it. Okay, this is one of the top 10 silliest Bree moments of all time. So when they are in bed together, Orson is moving south, and Bree stops him when he's at her lower abdomen. He's like, "Excuse me, did you lose something?" And he explains what he's planning to do. And she goes, "I'm a Republican." But she ends up enjoying this very much, and she has to go to the doctor the next day. She explains to the doctor she's pretty sure she had a small stroke. And the doctor tells her, "Bree, you had an orgasm." And all this time, Bree was married to Rex. He just never... I need a moment of silence for that. If Bree was my wife, I'm just saying, At the Bree Orson engagement party, Carolyn Bigsby shows up to warn Bree. Carolyn says to Orson, "Does she know that you killed your wife?" Because Elma was never heard from again after she left. No one could track her down, no one could find her, and Orson scrubbed the place from top to bottom like he was trying to hide something. Orson reassures Bree that his wife left him, and that's all there is to it. He cleaned the place because he likes to clean, and that's that. So Bree's like, okay. In the season 3 premiere, Lynette meets Kayla for the first time. So as a reminder, Kayla is the daughter Tom had. She's here in this little photograph of the family with Nora before he was married to Lynette. It was a one-night stand with Nora. So now Nora's back in his life. There's all this drama with Nora. She is just such a pain in the ass. She wants to be in the family Christmas photo, and she says that if she can't be in the photo, then Kayla can't be in the photo. And that upsets Kayla, and she's like, "Daddy, it's okay. I don't have to be in the picture." And then obviously Tom is upset, and then Lynette's upset because Tom's upset because Kayla's upset because her mom won't be in the fucking picture. So Nora is just a pain in Lynette's ass. Lynette invites Kayla to the twins' birthday party, but she does not want Nora there, so she just tells Nora that she's taking the kids to the movie that day. But Nora ends up stopping by, discovering that there is a birthday party, and she throws this big fit that they didn't want her there. It becomes this whole to-do, right? And Lynette, I would not say she lashes out at Tom, but she has an impassioned speech at Tom. It's a great scene between the two of them where she explains that the reason she's putting up with all of this is because she is his wife and she loves him. And if she has to put up with Nora and do everything she can to make Kayla a part of the family, to be a good wife, and that is what she's going to do. Lynette really is doing her absolute best with Kayla, in my opinion. Lynette is doing pretty much everything she can to make sure that Kayla is welcome with everything in the family, and it really is just Nora making things way more difficult than they need to be. Because Nora is an interesting character. She is fun. She adds conflict. And I am pro Nora personally. Like, I'm not team Nora, don't get me wrong. It's just that I enjoy Nora's presence. Next episode, I'll get to talk a little bit more about her, and she has some really good scenes, so I'm excited to get there. Now let's talk about Mike, who you may remember was hit by a car in the season 2 finale. And that car was driven by none other than Orson Hodge. So Mike is in a coma in the hospital. It's been about 6 months. Susan visits him all the time, and in this coma ward, there is a man who visits his wife. His name is Ian. And Ian, he asks Susan out on a date because Susan is just so irresistible, dateable, and lovable that of course he does, right? She decides to go out with him because she's very lonely with Mike being in a coma. It's kind of just like, let's go get coffee as friends type of thing, but it's pretty clear they've been flirting for a while. This is a date. Also, Ian is British. I just want to point that out. We wrap up the episode with the reveal of a second mystery. So, mystery number 1, what the fuck happened to Elma? Mystery number 2, we are shown a body being found when some ground is being dug up for a construction site. So now we have a dead body. And mystery number 3, why did Orson hit Mike with his car? What gives? Season 3, episode 2. We're gonna start with the Elma / Carolyn Bigsby / Susan Meyer stuff in the episode. So, because of the events at the engagement party with Carolyn Bigsby showing up, announcing to everyone that Orson murdered his wife, Susan begins to think that maybe Orson isn't so innocent. So she goes to talk to Carolyn Bigsby, where she works at a bank, and asks her to tell her more about Elma and Orson. Carolyn is like, "Oh, we can't talk right now, I'm working." And so Susan is like, "I need $10 in pennies." And she tells Susan that when the police searched the house following the disappearance of Elma, they found nothing. And Susan is like, "Okay." And Carolyn repeats, they found nothing. Orson made sure the place was clean. He cleaned the whole thing with bleach. Like, he bleached down every surface in the house. So Susan reports to the women that the only reason Orson was never arrested for the disappearance of his wife is because the police never found her body. Bree and Orson have dinner with Carolyn and her husband. So it's a little double date situation. I think they're at the country club. The two women go into the bathroom together. Orson's like, oh, you know women. They're probably in there fussing with their mascara. And then it cuts to Bree saying, he did not hack her up and dissolve her body in acid. It's so funny. Orson and Bree get married. Before they proceed with the ceremony, Bree asks Orson if he killed his wife. He says no, he did not, and so they get married. They have a reception afterwards. A few things happen at their reception after the wedding, but let's keep focused on Bree and Orson. The police show up and tell Bree and Orson that a body has been found and that Orson needs to come to the morgue to identify it. So they go to the morgue together. Orson tells the police, this redhead on the table is not Elma. Carolyn has also been called in to identify the body, and she confirms it is not Elma. Back at the reception, Nora and Carlos dance together. Lynette just wanted to get Nora off their necks, and so she tells her to go dance with Carlos since him and Gabby are splitting up because he cheated on Gabby, if you'll recall. Gabby is pissed at Carlos for dancing with some whore, and then Xiao Mei goes into labor. She delivers the baby, and it turns out they mixed up the embryos at the clinic. Classic. So the baby Xiao Mei carried is not the Solis baby, so they do not have a child. And that's the last we ever see of Xiao Mei. You did good, kid. Ian takes Susan out to dinner at a very expensive restaurant. This man has money. He's British. He has money. His wife is in a coma. He lives in this fancy mansion. Like, things are kind of working out for Susan. We also have a new character introduced this episode, Edie's nephew, Austin. Here he is. Right away, he and Julie get pretty flirty with one another. And finally, we get one more piece of information about the body found in the construction yard. They were unable to identify her through dental records because when she was killed, her teeth had all been removed. And if you'll recall, what is Orson's profession? He's a dentist. Season 3, Episode 3. Bree and Orson are at the airport to go on their honeymoon when a news story on TV catches Bree's eye. They are doing a story on the local unhoused population, and among the people interviewed is her son, Andrew. Bree panics upon seeing this, freaks out, says the honeymoon has to wait. Bree confesses to Orson at this point that Andrew did not run away like she has been saying, but instead she drove him away from home and left him on the side of the road. Bree decides she needs to find Andrew and bring him home. So she goes out into the area where these interviews are happening and starts looking around for him. She starts asking everyone nearby if they have seen him. There's this really funny moment where she walks up to someone who we presume to be a sex worker and says, "Excuse me, ma'am." She turns around and this is a black trans woman Bree is speaking to. And she goes, "Oh, I mean," and as the audience, knowing Bree, we're like, "Oh my God, she's gonna, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." But she says, "I mean, miss." Bree supports the black trans community. I'm sorry, she does. Bree finds Andrew at a soup kitchen. It's just like Kit Kittredge, seeing her own father at a soup kitchen and meet Kit. Oh my God. He does not want to go home with her. He has no interest in trying to fix the relationship with his mom because she threw him out and this is his life now. The next day, while Bree is gardening, she sobs over her flowers about Andrew. In order to help his wife, Orson goes to talk to Andrew himself. He buys him lunch and gives him some money, and Andrew's like, "What do I have to do for this 50?" And Orson is like, and Orson tells Andrew, "I know a thing about rage." He gets through to Andrew because Andrew returns home. Book him home. For Gabby in this episode, she runs into John Rolland at an event. You may recall John, the boy she was having an affair with. He is now 19, 20. They end up hooking up at this hotel because she tells him that she's getting divorced. After they hook up, there's someone knocking on the door, and John is like, oh, that's my fiance. She is this rich heiress whose father owns the whole hotel chain. John still has his landscaping company, and like that company is employed by the hotel chain. So this is disastrous if the father or the fiance were to find out. John tells Gabby that this hookup was a one-time thing and he has no interest in pursuing a longer-term affair with her because he is not a cheater, unlike Gabby. We get lots of Lynette and Nora in this episode. This episode has some of my favorite Nora scenes of the series. It's really remarkable stuff. I don't know what else to say. Tom has gone camping with the kids, so they're a couple hours away, and he throws out his back. So Lynette has to go get Tom and the kids and bring them home. And since Kayla's there, Nora is like, well, I'm coming with you. So they have to drive up like 8 hours together. And Nora is a very irritating companion in the car. At one point, she grabs the steering wheel and like swerves them into traffic. Lynette stops it before anything crazy happens, but Lynette is like, you are going to get us killed. Nora says, oh, you'd really like that if I killed myself, wouldn't you? Nora demands that Lynette pull over so she can get out of the car, and she says she is going to hitchhike to the campground. Like an hour later or so, Lynette finds Nora on the side of the road. She got out of the truck because the truck driver grabbed her boob, so she hit him on the head with a bong and then left. She gets in the car with Lynette. Nora apologizes and said that Lynette's crack about suicide just kind of hit home. And Lynette is like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Like, this girl she just needs some therapy. She just needs some therapy. And mental health care is expensive and not always accessible. And remember, this was also 2006, so it was even more inaccessible. These two scenes in the car are just phenomenal. Kirsten Warren, who plays Nora, is amazing. She absolutely nails this role. We get a full range of her in this single episode. It's just really beautiful work. I love watching this episode just for her. It's during this conversation in the car that Nora also tells Lynette that Tom told her he hates advertising and doesn't want to do it anymore. Lynette insists that if there was something else that Tom wanted to do, he would tell her, and Nora says no, he wouldn't, because you're a bitch and you never support any of his ideas. Let's jump over to Susan. So she and Ian go on a romantic getaway to a cabin up north. This is where they are planning to consummate their relationship. While they are making out, the conversation of how many partners they have each had before comes up. Ian says that he's only ever slept with his wife and now Susan, and Susan does not want to answer. And eventually he gets it out of her, and I think her answer is like 9 or something. Ian is like, starts like slut shaming her. He's like, 9? Oh my God, good heavens. They end up hooking up anyway, so they're officially a thing. And then, hours away, mind you, Susan has no cell phone reception where she is. Mike wakes up. Season 3, episode 4. This episode will be pretty quick. I just have a couple little things. So first, Bree finds out while visiting a friend of hers that Danielle, her daughter, is sleeping with her history professor. This is like count 3 of statutory rape in the show so far. Carlos decides to move back in with Gabby because she is demanding spousal support, and if she wants that much money, he can't afford a place of his own, so he moves back in just to fuck with her. Parker Scavo is struggling in baseball, so Lynette starts bribing a kid on the team so that he will throw his pitches so that Parker can hit the ball. She gets caught for this, and she has to bribe Parker's way back onto the team, and she says to the coach, "Are you asking for a bribe?" And the coach says, "Are you pretending you're above that?" Susan keeps extending her trip with Ian, so she still has absolutely no idea that Mike has woken up, and it's been like several days or like a week, maybe like a month. We don't really know, but doesn't Susan need to work? Did she bring all of her illustration supplies with her? I don't know. Edie has been helping Mike in the hospital because turns out he has amnesia, and he does not remember anything, starting from the point in time when he moved to Wisteria Lane. Orson is obviously very stressed to hear that Mike has woken up from his coma. Susan, upon hearing the news that Mike has woken up, rushes to his side Now, Edie has been telling Mike these lies about Susan so that he won't want to take her back. So now Mike and Edie are kind of a thing. Orson visits Mike in the hospital and learns that he has memory loss and doesn't remember anything, and is like, oh, that's too bad, oh no. Ian tells Susan that she is the best thing to happen to him in a really, really long time, and that he wants to keep pursuing their relationship. And Mike tells Susan that he has no interest in her being around. It's a messy, messy love square. If you didn't get enough of Susan, Edie, Mike in season 1, well, congratulations. There's more. Season 3, episode 5, Bree meddles in the affair between Danielle and her history teacher. Eventually, the two of them break up for good, and Danielle is upstairs in the bathtub trying to take a kitchen knife to her wrists. Andrew steps into the dining room. Bree is like, don't interrupt me, Andrew, we're having a conversation. And he's like, Danielle's upstairs trying to commit suicide. Bree runs upstairs. Andrew says something like, yeah, you better hurry, that spoon is really sharp. They end up taking Danielle to the hospital. She is ultimately unharmed, and while Andrew keeps cracking jokes about the situation, Orson completely snaps and says that suicide is the worst thing that could happen to a family, and he will not tolerate any jokes about it. And then Bree takes the whole family to therapy together. Danielle also reveals that following the breakup with the history professor, I called the school and I sent the tape to his wife, as she should. In the Scavo household, Lynette tells Tom that if he's not happy in advertising, she will be happy to support him in whatever it is he does want to do. Well, Tom has figured it out. He's gonna open a pizza parlor. At the end of the episode, Nora is tucking Kayla into bed, and Kayla says, I wish Daddy lived here. And Nora says, I'm working on it, baby. Susan finds out that Edie has been lying to Mike about her and Mike's relationship. Susan says, how do you sleep at night? And Edie says, soon, with Mike on top of me. And finally, detectives discover that some smudged ink on the back of the Jane Doe's hand is a phone number. Season 3, episode 6. There is a double date of sorts at a restaurant. It is Carolyn and her husband and Bree and Orson. When they are powdering their noses in the ladies' room, Carolyn shows Bree pictures of Elma before she disappeared. These are pictures she took for a police report when she reported Orson for domestic violence. Meanwhile, at the table, Carolyn's husband, Harvey, tells Orson that he had an affair with a woman named Monique Polier. He shows Orson a picture of her, and this is also a beautiful redhead. I need to note here that Orson looks kind of freaked at this. After dinner, Orson makes an anonymous call to the police and tells him that the name of the Jane Doe in the morgue is Monique Polier, and she was having an affair with a man named Harvey Bigsby. And now, our favorite time. I don't even want to look. Monique Polier, who we only see very briefly in a flashback and then in a few photos, is portrayed by Bird York, who plays Andrea White on The West Wing, one of my favorite minor characters on the show. And so when I was rewatching this series and she came on the screen, I forgot that she was in it. Oh my God, you can imagine my excitement. When the police called the phone number on the back of Monique's hand, it turns out to be Mike's phone number. So the police go and question him. They have a sketch of Monique, and he says he doesn't know her, at least he doesn't remember, and the police find this to be mighty convenient. Mike is undergoing therapy to try and bring back some of his memories, and he ends up having a vision of Monique. In the vision, we see Monique in a negligee opening her front door to Mike and saying something like, it's about time you showed up. And Mike tells a therapist that he thinks he knew her. With the Scavo storyline, Tom has found a place to turn into his pizzeria, and Lynette goes to check it out. The place is a dump, but Tom's like, no, we're going to clean it up. See, we're going to have this and this and this. And Tom's really excited about the place. And Lynette is just not impressed. And Tom says, you wanted to support my dream. Lynette says, my mistake. I assumed you'd have a dream worth supporting. Oh my God. And then Nora visits him at the pizza parlor, and she thinks the place is amazing. She brought wine, and they have dinner together at the restaurant, and then She makes her move and goes in for a kiss, and he quickly pushes her away. And he's like, Nora, I love my wife. And she's like, really? The one who thinks you're a loser? Tom goes home to Lynette. The two make up from their fight, and Lynette promises that they will find a way to make this work. Then Tom tells her about what happened with Nora. Lynette goes over to Nora's home, and she kicks down the door and lets herself inside and says, ding dong. She's never mothered harder in her life, I swear to God. Lynette Scavo. She tells Nora that she is no longer welcome around her or her family. She will drop Kayla off, and she will pick Kayla up, and she will not speak to Tom. Season 3, Episode 7, my favorite episode of the season. One of my favorite episodes of the entirety of Desperate Housewives. It is called Bang. I'm so fucking excited. So this was the first disaster episode of Desperate Housewives. There would go on to be one approximately every season through the end of its run. And this is the first, and it is event television at its finest. It starts out with Bree telling Carolyn about Harvey's affair because Orson told Bree about it. In this episode, we are also introduced to Orson's mother. Here she is, Gloria Hodge. This episode also contains the great Carlos and Gabby fight where they destroy their fucking house. So Carlos moved back in with Gabby, right? And the tension it creates, it just explodes. It is basically the big fight scene from Mr. and Mrs. Smith, except no guns. It starts with just smashing some glasses and plates, but then they're destroying like the whole fucking living room. So we can get into the main events of the episode, which follow the Scavo family. Lynette has a recurring dream about the day that Mary Alice took her own life. She has this dream on this particular day. It really reminds me of the season 2 bomb episode of Grey's Anatomy where Meredith's having these awful dreams. That shit, like the impending doom, I eat that shit up. I'm sorry. Event television, yummy. Nora announces to Tom that she is taking Kayla to Mexico. Tom and Lynette agree to sue for custody of Kayla. Tom is really surprised that Lynette is willing to do this because he didn't think that she'd want another kid. And her response is, I didn't want the first 4, but they're growing on me. We continue to see Danielle flirting / bitching at Austin, Edie's nephew. And in this episode, they go to the grocery store together to pick up a few things, and he hides a bottle of liquor in her backpack. She gets caught for this and is accused of shoplifting, and the two of them are pulled back into Harvey's office. Harvey, Carolyn's husband, is the manager of the grocery store. Lynette goes to the grocery store. Nora is also there. They are still bitching at each other. Carolyn Bigsby walks in searching for her husband. She confronts him about the affair. She called him earlier in the day and asked if he loved Monique. Harvey really dodges the question. So Carolyn goes in person to see him at the grocery store. She looks around for her husband. When she finds him, she is like, I think you should be with Monique. And then she fires a gun at him. And this turns into a hostage situation at the grocery store. Susan is outside the grocery store with Ian. They are arguing about Julie and the situation with Austin. And somebody runs out of the grocery store and alerts everyone in the parking lot that there is a woman with a gun in the store and she is holding people hostage. So Susan runs to the front doors of the store and Carolyn is locking the front doors. Susan is like, open up, there's a crazy lady with a gun in there. Carolyn just goes, I know. While the hostage situation is going on and it comes on the news, there is a watch party of the news being held at Bree's home. So basically the whole neighborhood is there watching the news, and the party finds out that Julie and Lynette are hostages. A little while later, Tom shows up with the kids. He says Lynette was just going to the store and she was supposed to come right home and he has an appointment he needs to get to, so can Bree and her party watch the kids? And that's when he discovers that Lynette is being held hostage. I am such a fucking sucker for one part of a couple finding out that the other is in mortal danger. If it has a happy ending, if I can enjoy the angst. That's not always true. Edie is also with Julie and Austin inside the manager's office, and when Harvey starts speaking over the loudspeaker to Carolyn in the grocery store, Edie chimes in. Carolyn thinks that some mistress of his is in there. She is even more aggravated now. Outside the grocery store, there's a whole police presence. Susan goes up to the police and offers to take the place of somebody inside the store. Just let Julie go and she'll go in instead. And cop is like, oh, you must mean our hostage exchange program. Lynette and Nora keep bickering, and Carolyn Bigsby wants everyone to be quiet. Nora will just not shut up. And so she goes over to them and says, the two of them are really getting on her nerves. Nora tells Carolyn that Lynette is trying to steal her kid. And Carolyn is like, is that true? And Lynette says, well, she tried to steal my husband. And Carolyn says, oh, why didn't you say so? And then shoots Nora in the chest. Lynette is trying to stop the bleeding. Nora starts asking Lynette to take really good care of Kayla. Lynette said, you can tell her this yourself later. And Nora says, I don't have later, you stupid bitch. She makes Lynette promise that she will take really, 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 really good care of Kayla. And Lynette promises. Nora says that Kayla is the only good thing she has ever done in her whole life. And then Nora dies. Lynette stands up and starts screaming at Carolyn. This escalates into a screaming match between the two of them, and Carolyn says that maybe Nora deserved to be shot, and then Lynette says, maybe you deserve to be cheated on. And that makes Carolyn lose her fucking mind, and she aims and shoots at Lynette, and that is when one of the other hostages grabs a can of soup and throws it at Carolyn Bigsby, so her arm is thrown as she's firing the gun. She ends up just hitting Lynette's shoulder. After a moment of madness with the gun lying on the floor of the grocery store, one of the hostages picks up the gun, shoots Carolyn, and kills her. Tom is standing outside watching all the people come out of the grocery store and waiting for Lynette, and they know that at least one person is dead. He doesn't know who is dead, and Lynette is just like not coming out of the store. And while he was waiting for her, he tells Susan, he's like crying. The only reason Lynette went to the grocery store is to get more hamburger because he really wanted hamburgers. And then Lynette emerges. She is on a gurney and bleeding from the shoulder, but she's okay. So Tom and Lynette reunite. Closing voiceover, we learn that Lynette never had the dream about Mary Alice and the day she died again. That is bang. So this brings our total death count now to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this brings our total death count of the show so far to 11. You guys, I never put the tombstone on George. Carolyn, I'm really sad doing this next one because I love Nora as a character. Is she annoying? Yes. Is she a little rascal? Yes. I hope this is my funeral, by the way. But it is a damn good performance by Kirsten Warren. Really interesting conflict. I'm really sad. Really sad. Oh, I took a little nap. Now I'm back. Season 3, episode 8. So Bree starts asking Orson more questions about his mother, Gloria. He is really snippy about her, though. He does not want to discuss his mother, period. So Bree pays Gloria Hodge a visit at her nursing home, and she is stunned to find out that Gloria Hodge is lucid. This whole time she has thought that Gloria is suffering from severe dementia and just can't be around and needs all these people to take care of her, and it turns out she's totally fine. Carlos and Gabby's divorce is finalized, and Gabby tries to return to modeling, but it's a little rocky, and she's not young and beautiful anymore. Oh my god. This becomes a recurring theme with Gabby. This idea that Gabby has passed her prime, her beauty has faded. Girl, you're still 30. We have the introduction of a new Lynette plotline this episode. So, if you'll recall, somebody threw a soup can at Carolyn Bigsby in the grocery store and it saved Lynette's life. That is this new neighbor who recently moved onto the lane. So Lynette stops by his house to thank him for saving her life. Lynette has not been completely honest with her kids about what happened to Auntie Nora and to herself. So when Parker finds out that his mother was, in fact, shot, he is incredibly upset and worried, and he does not want his mom to go to the grocery store anymore. Like, he's just a little anxious boy. Lynette has her new friend who saved her life once before come over and help her out. He explains that he is Mr. Protector Man and he was there to save the day once before, but his mom's not in any danger anymore, so Parker doesn't need to worry. But if something were to happen, he or one of his friends who are also superheroes would help. In order to thank him for helping her out again, Lynette decides to bake him a cake, and she goes over with Parker to deliver it to his house. Lynette goes to the man's house. He's not home, but the door is open, so she lets herself in and drops off the cake. Parker wanders off and starts exploring the house on his own. He winds up going to the basement, and Lynette follows him downstairs. There is a big model train and arcade machines and stuffed animals. It's just this giant, like, toy room in the basement. And at first, Lynette is like, this is so cute. Wow. And then she steps a little further into the basement, and plastered on the wall is like 150 photos of prepubescent boys in swim trunks. And Lynette is like, Parker, we need to go. It's nasty, nasty, nasty. On to the Mike, Monique, Orson stuff. The medical examiner determines that Monique died of a blow to the head made by a tool that fits the measurement of a plumber's wrench. Police get a warrant to search Mike's house. They are unable to find his toolbox, however, and Mike doesn't know where it is because he can't remember shit. He doesn't even remember, like, moving into this house. And then Mrs. McCluskey comes over to Mike and returns the toolbox. When she heard that the police were looking for a wrench and Mike's tools, she took it upon herself to hide the toolbox. Now, the reason she saw the toolbox is because while Mike was in a coma, she had been helping herself to use his lawnmower and things in his garage. She paid him back in this way. And lastly, in this episode, Julie and Austin make out. Girl. Season 3, episode 9. Bree has Gloria Hodge over for dinner. It is disastrous. During this time, Gloria reveals to Bree that Orson, too, had an affair with Monique Polier. After seeing Orson lie about his mother's condition and straight up yell at his mother because he fucking hates this woman, and now learning about the affair, Bree asks Orson to leave. Him having one dead lover and one who disappeared is just too much for her. She doesn't trust him anymore, so she throws him out. Gloria Hodge, for the time being though, is staying with Bree. Gabby starts coaching girls' pageants, and she accidentally gives them some really bad advice. It's like going okay at first. She's getting along okay with like these 10-year-olds. Then she starts talking about the methods that she and other models in New York used back in the 90s to lose weight. And so one of the parents catches their daughter smoking a cigarette, and like one of the girls is refusing to eat at home. It's just this whole disaster. She does try and make it right though, and they give her a second chance to work with the girls. For Lynette in this episode, the cops don't believe Lynette about the weird things in the neighbor Artie's basement, or they're just not concerned about it. Lynette finds her way into the house again, and all of the toys are gone. Now, this may be partially because Artie now knows that Lynette and Parker went into the basement, and so he would have had a reason to get rid of all this stuff. I want to note, so Artie lives with his sister who has disabilities, and she is a wheelchair user, so she is unable to go down into the basement. So the rest of the house is completely fine, but then it seemed to Lynette that like the basement was like his space where his sister wouldn't know about it. Anyway, he claims to have donated everything to the children's hospital, and he had just been holding on to it in his house until he could donated it all to the hospital. And he says of the pictures of the boys, that those are just the boys he coaches. Since he's just proud of his boys, he has pictures of them. Tom does call the children's hospital and confirms that they received a bunch of toys and things from Artie as donations. Lynette is still very upset about the whole situation, though, and she really feels that something isn't right, and so Tom encourages her to talk to someone. Instead of going to a therapist, however, Lynette goes to Mrs. McCluskey. Mrs. McCluskey is not pleased to hear about what Artie allegedly has been up to, and so she decides that she will spread the word around the whole community. Susan and Ian continue to pursue their relationship. She is spending more time at his fancy-ass mansion where he has a butler, and the butler does not like Susan because Jane is still alive, and he is very loyal to Jane. And finally, for Mike, he cannot remember if he killed Monique or not. He now remembers that he knows her, but he does not know what happened that night. He gets a new roommate this episode. Carlos Solis moves into the house with him. Carlos approaches Mike and asks to move in and says that they're the best of friends, and Mike doesn't remember them being best of friends. And of course, they were not best of friends. They were, they're friendly, but Carlos just needs a place to live, so they become roommates. It's kind of fun. Honestly, I think this was a really fun idea, and because it kind of creates like a space that they can use for like guy stuff during the season now with like Tom and Carlos and Mike. Love that. Mike decides, since he doesn't remember what happened, it might be best if he just buries his toolbox. So he goes out to the woods and he buries the toolbox, and he gets caught by the police. Season 3, episode 10. We have 2 big storylines this episode. So first, we have the conclusion of the Lynette Artie storyline. Mrs. McCluskey really spread the word throughout the neighborhood that this guy is a predator, or another P word that I don't even want to say because I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube without getting booted off. All of the stress has been making his sister more ill. There's a huge protest in front of Artie's house calling him out for being a predator, and it's absolute chaos. And the stress of this causes his sister to go into cardiac arrest. Paramedics come, and Artie comes out to get on the ambulance with her, and Lynette apologizes to him, and she's like, I never meant for any of this to happen. She finds out that the sister passed away. Artie is packing up his things to leave the lane, and Lynette goes over to say goodbye to him / get some closure on the whole thing. He does not confirm outright that Lynette was correct about him, but he does say that without his sister around anymore to be a good man for, he is free to do whatever he wants to do, and he can move wherever he wants and have a fresh start, and he's all alone now and can be evil and creepy. And so whether or not he meant it, or whether he is just fucking with Lynette, the audience does not really know. I lean towards he is a fucking creep, because I think if he were not, we would have seen his side of the story rather than just Lynette's. Usually on Desperate Housewives, when our assumptions about someone or a situation are wrong, we are told this by then seeing the other perspective, but we never see anything from him. We never get any flashbacks. So I can only conclude that Lynette was correct, and this guy is just fucking scary. And that is Lynette's part of the episode. And now on to Susan, Mike, Bree, Orson. Mary Alice has a voiceover line in the opening of the episode where she's like, but for a romantic few. And then it cuts to Susan, and it's just, the reason I have less notes for this chunk of episodes compared to like certain episode arcs from season 1 and 2 is just, I almost stopped watching during my rewatch because of Susan and Ian. Like, I just don't care. It just drags on so much, and I don't enjoy Susan as a character. I'm not saying she's a bad character. I'm just saying that I personally do not enjoy her presence on screen, and I don't think they give her very interesting plot lines. The best thing about Susan all season is that she is tied to Mike, who is tied to Bree. Like, Mike is officially arrested for the murder of Monique Polier. which is a huge relief to Bree, who has been wondering if her husband has been behind the murder or not. Susan starts trying to find Mike a lawyer, which Ian is not happy about because all she talks about is Mike all the time, and like they're not together anymore. So move on, Susan. Bree starts trying to get a hold of Orson to ask him to come home now that she knows he did not kill Monique Polier. So now for Susan, her only hope of getting Mike out of jail, because she doesn't have all this money or a fancy lawyer, is to prove that someone else committed the crime. So she goes snooping in Orson's office. Inside Orson's office, there is a closet in which she finds proof that he had been a patient at a mental health hospital. Ian tells Susan that he will hire the best lawyer in town for Mike if Susan agrees to stop talking to Mike. And Susan is like, yes, just get Mike out. We see Gloria make a phone call, and she says, meet me on the corner in an hour. We need to do this. And who pulls up an hour later? Elma Hodge. That's right, bitches. She is fucking alive. Wait a minute. You guys, I never put the tombstone on George. I think I was too happy he died. Okay, hold on. My sincere apologies if that's confusing at all, that it's not been there the whole time. Everybody makes mistakes. So that means we've had 12 deaths so far, right? Not 11, as previously reported by me. Season 3, episode 11. We find out that Elma originally got Orson to marry her by getting pregnant, but the pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. When she found out about the affair, she decided to leave Orson, and he did not care. So she just started packing up her things, and then because he doesn't care, she's like, well, fuck you, actually. According to Mary Alice's voiceover, it wasn't enough to leave her husband. He had to be punished. After that little flashback, we cut back to present day Wisteria Lane. Elma tells Bree that she has been in Canada this whole time, and she apologizes for this mess and confusion she has caused. And then Bree invites her over for dinner that weekend, in part because she wants to rub it in Susan's face that Orson did not kill his ex-wife. Prior to the dinner party, Alma gives herself an injection of some sort, and then at the end of the episode, she buys a house on Wisteria Lane. Let's talk about Gabby. So in this episode, Gabby begins to get flowers from a secret admirer of sorts. She thinks they are from this guy she is going on a few dates with. It's not. They're not from Carlos. Lynette is really trying to get along with Kayla following the death of Nora, but Kayla is a troubled young child, to say the least, so she's just not having it. Lynette tells her she does not blame her for being angry about what happened to her mom, but she promised her mom that she was going to take really good care of Kayla, so they have to work together to be able to do that. We get to see a little bit of Mike in prison, and we learn that he is in prison with none other than Paul Young. And if you'll recall, Paul Young was arrested last season for the murder of Felicia Tillman. They never found a body because she is still alive up in the mountains somewhere, but she cut off her fingers and framed him, so he was arrested. Despite telling Ian that she would no longer speak to Mike, Susan goes to visit Mike in prison, but just to tell him that she has a lawyer lined up for him. Also, this episode, we find out, poor Julie, that Austin, Edie's nephew, is sleeping with Danielle Vandekamp. Season 3, episode 12. Alma tells Orson that the reason she came to Wisteria Lane is to win him over. She also tells him that she knows that he ran Mike over, and she won't go to the police because he is no good to her if he is in jail. So as long as she has hope for their relationship, she won't go to the police. In Alma's house on Wisteria Lane, Bree finds a bag of teeth. Gabby keeps getting more and more extravagant gifts from her secret admirer. We find out this admirer is Zach Young. Zach Young, who has grown up. Remember, he got all that money from Noah, and now he is pursuing Gabby. He has long hair now, too. It's like It's like a little fuck ass bum. He's kind of pretentious and an asshole and a little creepy still. Lynette starts helping Tom out a bit at the restaurant. She is still recovering from being shot in the arm, but she's able to do a few little things around the restaurant with him. Mike gets beat up in jail and Paul breaks it up and helps Mike out. Well, it turns out that Paul paid those guys to beat Mike up so that he would be able to help Mike. And therefore, Mike owes him a favor. Julie goes to Edie to ask her for help getting the pill, and Edie helps her because she does not want Julie to get pregnant. Susan finds the birth control pills in Julie's room, and she is very upset about this and the idea that Julie may be having sex with Austin. Julie is not hooking up with him, but she plans for the possibility, so she's just doing the smart thing. Like, she's doing the right thing. Good for Julie. Susan goes over to Edie's house and lets herself in because she needs to have it out with Edie. And she sees Austin on the couch on top of a girl. And so she is like, Julie Meyer. It is not Julie Meyer, but Danielle. Susan tells Julie that Austin has been unfaithful to her and Julie has her first heartbreak. I feel like we are flying through this. I guess it's partially because the story is so spread out. So now that Orson and Bree are in possession of the teeth, which have presumably come from Monique Poulier, Elma can't hold that over them anymore. They are in control of the evidence. So Orson tells Elma she has nothing to threaten him with anymore. And Elma says that they would still be together if they had had a baby. And he's like, no, actually, sorry, bye. That evening, Orson gets a call from Gloria stating that Elma tried to end her own life and that he needs to go over there right away. He rushes over to Elma's house and finds her in bed. She is alive and fine, and Gloria hands him a drink. And this drink is drugged. When Bree gets home that night, Orson is not there, but she sees lights on at Alma's, so she goes right over. She goes upstairs and discovers, this is so disturbing. So I know that I put a viewer discretion advised at the start, but she discovers that because she wants to have a baby with Orson in order to make him stick around, Gloria helped Elma drug Orson, and then when he was unconscious, Elma assaulted him. Bree goes upstairs. At first, it looks like Orson just slept with Elma, and that's what Elma tells Bree. Bree goes over to get Orson out of bed, and he's just not moving, so she realizes he was drugged, and she's like, you, my husband. And then she punches Elma. It's pretty great. And her and Andrew get Orson into a wheelbarrow and take him home. This poor guy, it's really fucked up. Lynette tells Susan that Zach has all this money that he came into when his grandfather passed away. So Susan asks Gabby to go out with Zach like Zach wants in exchange for money for this lawyer. And this is because if she has the lawyer through Gabby and Zach, then she doesn't have to stop talking to Mike in order to have Ian's lawyer. Zach really wants to kiss Gabby. That's a requirement of this date. She's like, no, I'm not going to kiss you. And he says, do you want to tell Susan that Mike's going to stay in jail because you wouldn't kiss me? Sick little boy. Lynette is set to go back to work, but she plays sick so that she can go with Tom and help him out at a, it's a county fair type thing, because that's a great chance for them to promote their pizzeria, which will be opening very soon. However, Kayla sells her out to her boss when he stops by the house later to check on how she's doing. Her boss fires her. She does get her job back, but she decides she doesn't want it. She would rather work with Tom on the pizzeria. And she says if they're working on this together, it could very well be the best thing to ever happen to their family. In prison, Paul reminds Mike that he has a son and he wants to see him. And finally, Ian calls Susan and asks her to go to the hospital because Jane's condition has taken a turn for the worse. So Susan goes and sits with Jane. She will not live until Ian gets back into town to say goodbye. So Susan says, I'm going to put the phone up to Jane's ear. Ian says goodbye to Jane before she passes away. This is a rare Susan W. Susan this season has been extra insufferable to me. Like this storyline, I just don't like it. But we do have her being funny in the episode Bang, and now in this episode doing something really sweet like that, I enjoyed. So it's nice to see. Yep, that's all. I don't have anything more for that sentence. Season 3, episode 14. Zach continues to be weird / creepy / annoying with Gabby. Gloria locks Elma in a closet upstairs in her house. Bree sees a ladder going up to one of the second-story windows of her house, and there is like the small bag that the teeth were in and is dangling from one of the rungs on the ladder. So Bree climbs up the ladder, but it has been trapped, so she would fall. So she falls to the ground. Orson and Andrew rush her to the hospital. In the bag, BT dubs are not the teeth, but just a bag of marbles. So it's perhaps suggesting that the evidence is once again not in their hands, but in Gloria / Alma's hands. Andrew gets really protective of Bree in this episode, especially once they get to the hospital, and he tells Orson that if it turns out that he is at fault for all of this awful shit happening to his mother, that he will meet bad Andrew. Honestly, like, kind of me with Bree. If you fuck with her, you will meet bad Abby. Sorry, and I have certifications in quarterstaff and unarmed combat, so finally for this episode, we have a flashback from Mike's perspective. It is a continuation of the brief glimpse we got of Monique in the episode where he remembers that he knew her. So he goes over to Monique's house to do a plumbing job. She is supposed to be entertaining a man later that evening, but he is not there yet. And Monique is a little flirty with Mike. He has to leave to go get a part, and then he'll come back to fix her sink. So he leaves. When he comes back, there is no sight of Monique anywhere, but he does remember seeing someone else there. But he can't remember the face. We see these yellow gloves coming up on the counter, and then someone's like about to stand up, but we don't see who it is. Mike is just relieved that he didn't kill her. Mike continues working with this memory until finally he remembers that the person he saw at Monique Poulier's house was, in fact, Orson Hodge. Orson is at the hospital with Bree. He's in the parking garage, and Mike goes up to him to confront him. He is about to lunge at him, to make this a physical fight. And Orson stands up on the cars and starts running, and then he trips and he falls backwards off the parking garage, and he just falls. Season 3, episode 15. We are going to start with the stuff that's not this. So, Gabby wakes up after a date night where she was pretty darn drunk, and Zach helped her to bed. He makes her think that they slept together. There's a condom wrapper next to them. It's pretty clear to Gabby that she does not remember anything, but they apparently hooked up. However, at the opening of the pizzeria, this is so stupid. At the opening of the pizzeria, Carlos goes to the restroom, and he is at the urinal next to Zach Young. And he sees a little more of Zach Young than he had planned to see. And he goes to Gabby and says, "Don't worry, if you slept with Zach Young, you would remember." So, yeah, Gabby did not sleep with Zach Young. Or I should really say Zach Young did not assault her. Yay! During this week, Ian discovers that Mike had an engagement ring on him the night that he was hit by a car. And so that night at the Scavo Pizzeria opening, Ian proposes to Susan, and she says yes. Mike is visibly annoyed. Right after this proposal, Zach gets down on one knee and asks Gabby to marry him. And people start clapping just like they did a few seconds ago when Ian and Susan got engaged. And Gabby just goes, "There will be no clapping. She is not going to marry Zach Young. Are you crazy?" Okay, now on to the good stuff. Gloria killed Monique. And it was Orson who helped her clean up the scene. He did not report this because he didn't want his mother to go to jail, and also because he was the one having an affair with her, so how likely is it that people are going to believe that Gloria is the one who did this, right? Gloria tells Elma through the door, because she is still locked up in this like tiny attic room, that Bree will be gone soon. So Elma, wanting to do something to stop Gloria from killing Bree, starts trying to break out of the room via a small window. Now, why didn't she do this before? I don't know. Maybe she just likes to commit to the bit. So Elma gets outside the window, and Danielle is standing outside, and she has like a compact in her hand. Elma starts waving to try and get her attention, but Danielle does not notice her, and Elma falls off the roof and plummets to her death. Yay! This is so fun. Aren't you guys having fun? Andrew, who has figured out that something is wrong, rushes upstairs to try and find Bree. Gloria whacks him on the head with her cane and he falls down the stairs. Orson gets there in time though, and he finds Bree in the bathtub, unconscious, and a knife sitting near her. And it looks eerily similar to the night that he found his father in the bathtub. So Orson is able to put together that his father did not end his own life. Gloria murdered him, and she was going to use the same method to murder Bree. Orson scoops Bree out of the tub and carries her to bed. He's carrying a very pregnant Marcia Cross at this point, and for the last 6 episodes, we've only seen Bree from the chest up because she is very pregnant. The stress of all this causes Gloria to have another stroke, and she is left paralyzed from the neck down. In the hospital, Orson explains to Gloria that he has made sure that everything having to do with Monique's murder is traceable back to Elma instead of Gloria, because he wants Gloria to stay in the hospital and rot there, which will be even worse for her than jail or a death sentence ever would be. And then he takes his mother's head and turns it and says, "Now I'm going to turn your head. You can watch me walk away." And that's that. That's a wrap on this storyline. Season 3, episode 16. This is a very special opening because it is not narrated by Mary Alice Young as usual. Instead, it is narrated by Rex Vandekamp. Yes, the long dead Rex Vandekamp has come back to narrate for us just one little episode. One of the things he says in this voiceover is that he is relieved to be dead. So Bree does not actually appear in this episode. As of the end of episode 15, Marcia Cross is on maternity leave. She is out of there. Bree has already gone to stay with her parents, and Orson will be joining her, and then they'll be going on their honeymoon. As he's getting ready to leave, however, the kids stop him and share some pretty big news, which is Danielle is pregnant. Gabby meets a new love interest in this episode. His name is Victor Lang, and Victor is a local politician running for mayor of Fairview. There wasn't room to put his full picture here, so I just squeezed him in, and I think it's funny. So, it's not perfect, but who is? I think it's fun. Tom is quite the romantic. It is his and Lynette's wedding anniversary, so he has this whole romantic plan. He is going to have her be surprised by a man with a limo who will then drive her to a secondary location where Tom will then pick her up in a horse-drawn carriage. So this is all going to be a surprise for her. He tells her that he made some plans for them tonight. Lynette tells him she doesn't want to do anything for their anniversary other than go home and sleep because running the pizzeria is exhausting. So Tom cancels, but the limo driver never gets the message. So Lynette is picked up and driven to the middle of the road in these woods. And she sits there waiting for Tom for 2.5 hours. And he goes and gets her when he finds out what happened. They end up at a little diner having some coffee to warm up. Lynette forgives him for the whole mess and says it's been 9 years and she has loved every minute of it. This episode is really sweet for Tom and Lynette. It's one of the last moments we get of Tom being really sweet like this. I mean, he still has his moments throughout the show, but after the midpoint of season 3, Tom starts to slowly become more and more insufferable and selfish, so it's nice to have this while it lasts. I wrote in my notes for Susan for this episode, a Susan elephant that isn't hideous. OMG. Had a little boys' night at the pizzeria. They're playing some poker, and Mike and Ian are doing one of those like my horse is bigger than your horse things over a game of poker. And they decide to bet for Susan. Ian wins. We start a new Edie arc this episode, which is very exciting because she doesn't get a whole lot of those. But in this episode, her son is dropped off to her care by her ex-husband. We know before this Edie has a kid, but like he's very rarely mentioned. He's never been seen on screen before. Edie asks Carlos to babysit him because she has plans that night. She can't just drop everything to take care of Travers. Carlos refuses because he also has a date that night. Later that night, when Carlos has this woman over, he can see out the window and sees Travers playing in the street with his soccer ball. And Travers, I think he's like 7. And Travers is like, sorry, I ruined your date. He's really precious. The next day, Edie picks Travers up and says to Carlos that she knows he thinks she's a horrible person and a horrible mother. Carlos says that if she ever wants him to babysit for Travers again, then he'd be happy to do it. She just needs to ask. It's really nice that we have an Edie arc that doesn't have anything to do with Susan or with Mike. And also, we are starting to see more dimension to Carlos. I mean, season 1 and pretty much the end of 2, Carlos was just a fucking jackass. So to have a Carlos who is just a kind man who loves kids and wants to help out his friends and has a good heart. Good. We love it. Season 3, episode 17. Tom is at the pizzeria pretty late, which is concerning to Lynette. She goes to the pizzeria and finds him laying on the floor unconscious. When I tell you, every time I watch this, my heart stops. She calls 911 and she is sobbing and hysterical and tells him, I swear if you leave me with a mortgage and a restaurant and 5 kids, I will track you into the deepest pits of hell and make you pay. Turns out he just fucked up his back, so luckily he's gonna be okay, but man, it was a scary moment there. Mike decides he doesn't want to continue therapy any longer because the memories that it's bringing back are just too painful to relive. Susan, who is engaged to Ian, has some disagreements with her parents. It's a really popular trope, but you know, the woman who doesn't really want to sign a prenup because then it means her rich soon-to-be husband doesn't trust her, and the parents really want her to sign it and won't let her marry their son unless she signs it. That whole thing. At the end of the day, there's no prenup though. It's all resolved in one episode. Edie tries to seduce Carlos, but he's a stronger man than that. We have this beautiful Edie scene in this episode where she's standing in the living room with Carlos and she just strips. She's made herself as vulnerable as possible. And as she's stripping, she's talking about all these imperfections on her body, like the C-section scar she has. And I don't know. It's beautiful. And she says, I might not be the Edie that you thought I was under all of that, but I'm here and I'm real and I'm asking for a chance. And then Edie and Carlos are in bed together. Season 3, episode 18. You'll notice there's just not a whole lot going on in these episodes, and that's how it feels when you're watching it. But it is what it is. Tom currently cannot work at the pizzeria because of his back. He needs like 2 months to heal. So Mrs. McCluskey is over helping him and the kids all day while Lynette runs the restaurant alone. And Tom starts being a little bitch to Mrs. McCluskey, so she quits, and good for her because he is being so insufferable. There's a part where Lynette gets home from running his restaurant all day. It's their restaurant, and Tom tries to get a little frisky, and she's like, Tom, you can't move. And he's like, well, you can. Bitch, if Lynette was my wife, this would be just a different story, a different show. Lynette cannot run the pizza parlor alone, so they end up hiring a manager named Rick. Here he is. Rick has an incredible resume and he is an extraordinary chef. He went to culinary school in Italy. He's just a really cool guy and he's really good at what he does. Lynette asks why he is applying to work there, and he's honest with her and says that he has a criminal record and so no one will hire him. But Lynette decides to take a chance on him and hires him. Susan and Ian continue to fight about Mike. Oh my god. It's been since It's been 20 episodes. I'm so tired. I'm so done. Ian thinks that like Mike is fucking stalking them because everywhere they go, Mike seems to be there. After they leave this like farmer's market thing, I think Susan accidentally drives her car into the lake because she's trying to avoid a deer. Ian can't swim. And guess who comes around and saves the day? Mike. So Susan wants to give Mike a gift, a thank you for saving my life gift. And Ian is like, no, you shouldn't be talking to him. Susan goes over to give Mike the gift, and Mike kisses Susan, and then Susan runs back home. Season 3, episode 19. Gabby and Victor are engaged. The 3 Scoville boys want fudgesicles. And they're like, oh, you know who has fudgesicles? Mrs. McCluskey. They send Parker into Mrs. McCluskey's to get them some fudgesicles. So Parker goes down to the basement where the big freezer is and opens it up. And guess what's inside? It's a body. It turns out to be the body of her husband. And Mrs. McCluskey gets arrested. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Rick and Lynette are being a little flirty. Okay, like after they close up the restaurants in the evening, they will have dinner, just the two of them, and have some wine. And Lynette gets to relax and she'll like take down her hair from her hair clip. Nothing like happens between the two of them, but it's clear that like they are kind of starting to push some boundaries. And while this is happening, Tom is beginning to get a little upset that the restaurant is doing so well under Rick's management. The restaurant is also starting to sell fancier foods because Rick knows how to make all that. It's becoming a little bit more of a higher dining Italian restaurant. Which Lynette says is great because it means more revenue, but Tom still is not so sure about the whole thing. Season 3, episode 20. Let's start with Gabby. Gabby is upset to learn that Carlos and Edie are seeing each other. She asks the other women to stay away from Edie because what kind of backstabber dates your ex-husband? But Edie asks Lynette to cater her son's birthday party, and Lynette needs the business, so she can't just cut Edie off. We resolve the plot from the previous episode about Mrs. McCluskey's husband in the freezer. We learn that she kept his body after she died because she wanted to keep cashing his pension. And finally, in the aftermath of the Susan and Mike kiss, Susan and Ian break up, I feel like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. It's over. I'm free. Bye. Bye, bitch. He's so British and sad. Season 3, episode 21. Victor wins the election and becomes mayor of Fairview. Now that her husband is the soon-to-be mayor, Gabby gets a little sassy with a meter man over a parking ticket. When she's getting all sassy, he grabs her arm. It ends up bruising her wrist. At the election celebration party, Gabby is really excited that Victor won. And after the party, Victor tells her that she was acting so immature and completely embarrassed her in front of all of his friends and the important people he needs to impress. So they have this whole argument about it. Victor notices the bruises on Gabby's wrist, and she says that they came from this meter man. So Victor gets the man killed. Susan goes up to the mountains to look for Mike. She finds him, and the two of them end up getting engaged. It's been like 3 years, you guys. And finally, for Lynette, you can probably see I'm just so tired. While Lynette and Rick are having dinner one night and flirting as usual over their wine and pasta, they are robbed. They end up being shut in the freezer together overnight, and when Tom gets there in the morning, he finds both of them there. Then they check the surveillance tape with the police. Tom sees the two of them having dinner together prior to the people walking in, and he just sees the look on Lynette's face, and he picks up on exactly what's happening. So later on, he asks Rick to quit, but Rick refuses. Rick then tells Lynette that Tom asked him to quit, and he confesses he has feelings for Lynette and makes it clear that he has indeed been flirting with Lynette. Lynette is devastated by this because, according to Lynette, it means now she really does have to fire him. Everything was fine before when they were just having fun and being a little flirty, being a little silly, but now that he's made it this real thing, she can't have him working there because she will not do something like that to threaten her marriage. So Lynette fires him. Season 3, episode 22. Lynette and Tom have an argument. Lynette also tells Tom that Rick didn't quit. She fired him. And so this is a revelation to Tom. They then proceed to do things in their bed, and they are being rough. And Lynette gets thrown off the bed and hits her head on the nightstand. It makes this loud thud too. It's bad. So Tom rushes her to the hospital. She gets a CT scan done. And they are still bickering with each other. There's a lot of tension between the two of them. And as they sit down to hear the CT results, the doctor reveals that Lynette may have cancer. And we get a shot of Tom and Lynette's hands, which are dangling from their chairs where they're sitting with the doctor, and they reach and connect and they hold hands. And that's kind of how they make up from this fight. Now that she's engaged to Mike, Susan decides she wants to keep her original wedding date. So that's the wedding date that she had planned to marry Ian. Her reasoning is because she already knows all her friends are free. There's catering and venues and all that. But Gabby already booked her wedding for that day for the same reason, because Susan didn't need it anymore and she knew all of her friends were already free. So they decide to have a double date, but then by the time morning comes around, they're actually, let's not do that. Terrible idea. So they call that idea off. Edie, meanwhile, wants to get more serious with Carlos. Carlos tells Edie that he can't move in with her because he simply isn't in love with her. During this week, Edie also has a pregnancy scare. She takes the test and she is really excited when she thinks it might be positive, but the test turns out to be negative. Edie tells Carlos about it though, and she suggests that he try to move in to have a baby with her. She knows Carlos loves kids. He really wants kids of his own, and it seems based on her reaction to this pregnancy scare that it's really something Edie wants to try. So Carlos agrees. They move in together and decide they're going to start trying to have kids. But Edie keeps taking her birth control pills. I mean, after what Carlos did to Gabby in season 1, kind of karma, you know? Season 3, episode 23, the finale. Bree is back. Bree comes back for Gabby's wedding, and she is very pregnant. This comes as a surprise to all of the women. Her honeymoon apparently went well. Gabby and Victor get married. And right after the ceremony, Gabby hears Victor talking to his father. She finds out that the only reason he married her is because he needed some help with the Latino vote in the governor's race. Then his father refers to Gabby as, quote, an asset. Carlos finds Edie's birth control in her purse. He confronts her about it at the wedding and says that she has completely broken his trust and he can't do this anymore if he can't even trust her. So Carlos is sad. Gabby is sad. She's just married Victor an hour ago. And they end up hooking up in the bridal suite. So messy. Oh my God. These two crazy kids. Lynette's mother shows up to help her with the cancer. Lynette's mother shows up to help her around the house and with the kids because cancer treatment is going to take a lot out of her. Lynette really does not want her around. She sticks around into next season, so we'll talk about her a little more then, and I'll put her on the wall for season 4. Mike is wearing himself thin, taking extra jobs after hours because Susan wants a pretty elaborate wedding and he doesn't have the kind of money that Ian had. And when she sees how stressed out Mike is about money and the wedding, Susan throws a little intimate wedding for the two of them. So it's just the two of them and Julie and the officiator, and they have this really small intimate wedding, and it's cute. One of the things she says at their wedding though is that there's only one thing that stays constant in her life, and it's Mike. And it's girl, you were just engaged to a different man a week ago. And that's it for season 3. Oh my God, I lied. That's not where we end. And the season ends with Edie going home and heartbroken about Carlos. She tries to hang herself. Oh overall thoughts for season 3. I like it. I like the first half way better than the second half. I just covered 8 episodes in 30 minutes, which is insane. There's just nothing happening in these later episodes. Everything that happens to lead up to like Victor and Gabby's engagement and Carlos and Edie becoming more serious are they're just 30-second scenes that are so short. There's no mystery tying things together anymore now that Bree's gone. Let's talk about the pros and the cons of this season. I think that's the best way to do this. Pro, Nora. The episode Bang is a fucking phenomenal episode. Episode 2 of the season where they have the scene in the truck. Kirsten Warren is unbelievable. I like the Lynette and Rick storyline. I think it's interesting. I think it gives us great insight into Lynette and her inner conflicts. I also really like the Elma Gloria storyline, although it gets a little fucked up near the end. I love when women are evil sometimes. Things I don't like. Also, the Zach Young Gabby thing is kind of weird, but I guess they just wanted to bring Zach back. Season 4 will see the introduction of one of my favorite characters of the entire series, Catherine. I'm so excited to get that wall set up. If you enjoyed this video, you can support the channel in a few different ways. So first, you can subscribe. That means a lot. You can share it with a friend who loves Desperate Housewives or who just loves TV where a lot of crazy things happen. You could also donate to support the channel's production costs on Ko-fi. If you would like to be a producer of season 4, feel free to do that. Thank you so much for watching, and that does it for me for today. So yeah, thank you. Bye.